If you've watched this show, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Riff Tracks, Pee-wee's Playhouse, and really a number of others, you're probably already familiar to some degree with names like Centron, Coronet, and Jam Handy. And indeed, if you've watched this show long enough, you know that we've riffed several films from these studios, if you will. And indeed, almost since day one here on the archive, we've used tons of footage from these things as stock footage, largely because a lot of it's in the public domain. Now, recently it was brought to my attention by a viewer that for all the time that we've spent with this stuff, we've never really discussed the companies and the personalities behind them, and I agreed. So with that, yes, this is going to be one of my little history lesson episodes, but I do think this is significant, especially for something like Oddity Archive.
Before the children are dismissed for the day, Miss Jones suggests that they review the safety rules they discussed yesterday.
It's really easy to have a good laugh at old educational films. These things were often made with little to no budget, with often inexperienced staff. Now couple that with often silly, unnecessary attempts at making things more entertaining, not to mention us looking at the topics, fashions, and overall tenor of the times several decades removed, and you often wind up with a perfect storm of weirdness. Again, to our eyes.
There was a turtle by the name of Bert.
Now, while I think many of our viewers are probably a little young to have seen something like Duck and Cover when it was new, I think we've all had to sit through at least some horribly outdated educational films and or videos in school, which is always right on the cutting edge anyway. I personally was caught in some strange netherworld between 16mm film and VHS, and managed to catch the best, or is it worst, of both worlds. On the one hand, I'd have to sit through some 1970s thing on 16mm in civics class, sometimes running the projector, shocking I know, then have to sit through a battered Slim Goodbody VHS in health class on the same day.
Take me places and legs, for running races and arms, for warm embraces, not to mention my gorgeous face.
The story of conservation is the story of waste and how it can be prevented.
But we're not here to discuss my school days, so let's get started. Our first company is Herpie Films, Herpie standing for Electrical Research Products Incorporated. Herpie was a division of Western Electric, which owned the patent to the then prevalent Vitaphone disc-based recording system used in many late silent and early talkie films. Appropriately enough, Herpie seems to be the first company to make classroom films with sound. Unsurprisingly, Herpie shorts tend to be very, very dry.
They immediately set to work building their dams, which serve admirably in controlling floodwaters in small headwater streams.
Herpie sold out to Encyclopedia Britannica around 1948 and almost immediately spat out an archive classic.
Big trees, they play with the wind.
Stop the tickles! Unlike Herpie, Britannica's films were often less dry and more creative. A good example of this is a film that should be familiar to our regular viewers, 1953's Halloween Party.
Mother, Julie, and Shep watching.
You don't think we went too far, did we,
There's
Mom?
a witch,
Shut up,
a
darling.
cat, and a clown. Every different kind of costume. But Peter's Lady Scarecrow is the best. It is so funny and so different.
And of course, Mystery Science Theater 3000 aficionados are likely familiar with titles such as A Day at the Fair and Junior Rodeo Daredevils. Encyclopedia Britannica was arguably the longest-lasting maker of educational films, their most recent release dating to around 1995.
What do you talk about on your dates?
Oh, movies and popular songs.
Orchestras, dancing.
And
Larry's chosen profession, engineering.
no, I don't understand any of it.
Our next major player in educationals is Coronet, which was formed around 1940 by one David Smart, who had also founded Esquire magazine in 1932. Coronet specialized in social guidance films like Are You Ready for Marriage and Going Steady.
Mother.
That was Alice. She wanted me to come over and make some fudge with her.
girls. But I guess I'll go anyway.
Don't worry, Marie.
Meanwhile, in 1947, the Centron Corporation was formed in Lawrence, Kansas. Like Coronet, Centron is best remembered for its social guidance films like The Innocent Party, but also made several explicitly instructional films, often dedicated to topics like home economics.
The first step in making the simple seam is to place the right sides of the two pieces of material together. Be sure both edges are even before pinning.
In 1981, Centron was folded into Coronet. The most recent Coronet film I've been able to find is actually another one we've riffed here on the archive, namely 1985's Halloween Safety 2nd Edition. I think I'm having a heart attack. Now, my superior acting skill, that's scary. Another name that looms large in archive lore is Sid Davis, even though to date only 2 of his productions have been featured on the show. One of these, namely Santa and the Fairy Snow Queen, is probably one of the most notorious shorts we've ever tackled. Now, Davis was best known for, like Centron, social guidance films, just slightly different ones, meaning that Davis had a tendency toward blood, guts, melodrama, and heavy-handed social messages. In the case of Fairy Snow Queen, Davis backed off on the overt realism in favor of allegory. For example, the title character in this short exacts a petty revenge on Santa Claus for forgetting to give her a sugar cookie, the moral being that revenge and selfishness are wrong. Oh yeah, and take care of your toys.
The toys that are broken and forgotten, Santa has me pick up in a big basket and take to the land of lost and forgotten toys. Well, none of the toys want to go there, as you can surely imagine. So, Santa thought that if I came here and told you how the Fairy Snow Queen first gave toys life, that then you would appreciate them more and take better care of them.
Anybody to try to harm you with a lot of other kids around, wouldn't it? And what kind of a kid would a man like that look for?
Sid Davis had been a Hollywood bit part actor since childhood and had grown up to become a double for the likes of John Wayne. Sometime in 1949, Davis read a news story about a local 6-year-old girl who'd been molested, then killed. Alarmed and with a 6-year-old daughter of his own, Davis asked John Wayne to loan him $1,000 to make an educational film on stranger danger. The resulting film, The Dangerous Stranger, was, by educational standards, a rousing success, reaping a $250,000 profit for Davis. Deciding that he had a good thing going, Davis retired from performing and started producing social guidance and safety films mostly designed for classroom use. Arguably, Davis's most infamous creation was 1951's Boys Beware, in which you are warned of the dangers of that horrible illness known as homosexuality.
Then during lunch, Ralph showed him some pornographic pictures. Jimmy knew he shouldn't be interested, but, well, he was curious. What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick. A sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual. Then during lunch, Ralph showed him some pornographic pictures. Jimmy knew he shouldn't be interested, but, well, he was curious. What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex.
And because there is so much to do, we sometimes forget how quickly the time passes.
Davis continued to produce educational films through about 1975, after which time he had accrued enough money through his films and subsequent real estate investments to allow him to retire a multi-millionaire. Davis died in 2006. In 1962, one Stelios Rokos founded ACI Films as a means of distributing an educational film he'd made called The Purple Turtle, which had been bankrolled by the American Crayon Company, which also refused to work out the distribution of their own film. The seeming acronym ACI doesn't actually stand for anything. Rokkos just thought it sounded cool. Anyway, fans of riff tracks should be familiar with ACI's back catalog, which is loaded with truly exciting works like County Fair, One Turkey, Two Turkey, Maple Sugar Farmer, and the At Your Fingertips series, featuring entries on grass, lawn grass that is, and cardboard boxes.
At Your Fingertips. Prisons. Boxes. Prisons made of boxes.
Yeah, I did it, and I do it again.
Stelios Rokkos was known for exhibiting erratic behavior, and his episodes only continued to increase in intensity. In the late 70s, unable to handle running his company anymore, Rokkos sold ACI to Paramount Pictures. Rokkos then spent the next few years in and out of mental institutions before attempting to start an ill-advised home video distribution center, then, sadly most likely deliberately, crashing his private plane in Pennsylvania sometime in the 80s. In the years since, the rights to the ACI catalog have changed hands several times over. As far as I'm concerned, our final subject is the king of ephemeral films. With some 7,000 films, industrial musicals, and early TV commercials released under his banner, Henry Jameson, aka Jam, Handy, was the dominant voice in company training, military training, and corporate propaganda for well over 30 years. Fans of Mystery Science Theater 3000 should be quite familiar with films like Hired and A Case of Spring Fever.
No springs!
Prior to making films, Handy had been a two-time Olympic medalist in swimming, a record-setting 20 years apart no less, and had been employed, remotely in Michigan, in various capacities by the Chicago Tribune. While working at the Tribune, Handy had attempted to attend college, but was thrown out of 2 different schools for critiquing a professor's teaching methods. After being thrown out of his final school, Handy continued to work at the Tribune, now in the advertising department. It was here that Handy honed his rather bizarre knack for propaganda by trying to build up fellow workers' enthusiasm for whatever product that came their way. Around 1935, Handy shifted his attention to the world of ephemeral film.
I remember one of the first things that Harry drilled into me was the importance of having a good list of prospects.
Yes?
Then he showed me how to go about getting it, how to keep it up, how to cover the list, and how often. Why, I had the importance of prospects drilled into me from the very first day I started to work.
Has Jimmy?
To say Jam Handy was an idiosyncratic person would be an understatement. For example, Handy refused to wear suits with pockets, as they were a waste of time, while at varying times during his run as a film producer, refused to allow his employees to sport mustaches because they were distracting, wear bow ties because they had fallen out of style, and wear shirts with button-down collars, but you still must wear a matching, preferably silk, tie. Office employees of the Jam Handy organization were also each presented with a framed list of responsibilities to keep hung at all times above their desks. And speaking of desks, Handy himself refused to keep a desk, preferring to work wherever and whenever he felt the need, and refused to film anything ephemeral in color as he deemed it wasteful. Now, after viewing a lengthy 1966 interview with the man, I'm convinced he was pretty delusional. Aside from his eccentricities, he seemed to honestly believe that he held the divine right to teach by his methods, which were never, ever wrong.
Jesus made motion pictures. I speak in reverence, even though I speak figuratively, as he usually did. He made motion pictures in people's minds. He talked in terms of images. He used the familiar language. We're told that he spoke in the Aramaic and not in the Hebrew. And always in terms of things that people couldn't visualize.
For a successful life, every drop of gasoline depends entirely upon what happens to him after he gets in the swim. Ah, a nice
Unsurprisingly, Jam Handy didn't really bother to keep up with the times as a filmmaker or with his industrial musicals. Much of his earlier 1930s work was already considered passé at the time, particularly in the animation department. But by the time the late 60s rolled around, Handy's methods had grown stagnant to the point where he was easily swallowed up by his competitors, even with his extensive experience with corporate politics. Handy died in 1983 at age 97. And that's it for today's archive. Join us next time when we play some of these films backwards in search of satanic messages.
I've got some sort of sore down there. Oh, well, don't worry about it. It's probably just a pimple or something.